Historical records confirm that Estonia was ruled by Russia for much of the 20th century. Its communist nightmare began when Stalin ordered 500,000 Red Army soldiers to annex the country in 1940.
For the Soviets, Estonia was always a keystone of their naval power, guarding the approaches to St. Petersburg and the whole Soviet position on the Baltic.
Up until the time that the Soviet Union dissolves in 1991, Estonia is a subservient state to Mother Russia.
Cold War-era files suggest that during their decades of tyrannical rule, the Soviets detained tens of thousands of Estonians in prisons, such as the one in the image.
Estonia was very heavily repressed. Their nationalism is ferocious, so the surveillance of them was even more intense.
The prison appears to be a legacy of Joseph Stalin's brutal Gulag system.
But the Gulag system itself continued until the 1950s and ended with Stalin's death. This building looks a little bit newer than that, but the rest of the prison, maybe it was part of the Gulag system.
Studies suggest that between 1920 and 1953, Gulags claimed the lives of over 1 million people, more than the number of Americans killed in every war the US has ever engaged in.
What kind of Soviet horror stories were hidden in this building?
Johnson hopes the strange white mass next to the prison may provide some answers.
So this must be that mountain I saw from the satellite image. There are whole lines of ridges everywhere. Crevices that have been formed by running water, so rainwater itself must have shaped this. It's got to be, I don't know, 40, 50 feet high, maybe even higher. I can't imagine that anything would naturally exist that looks like this.
Closer analysis appears to confirm his suspicions.
So this all consists of exactly the same material, but it is not quite sand. I'm guessing that it might be some sort of limestone. This must be connected to mining. We have this prison camp right here. And quite often in the Soviet system, they had forced labor. And so I'm willing to bet that this is a product of that.
Soviet prison diaries reveal that inmates, or zeks, were often put to work for 14 hours a day. While constructing a canal to the northeast of Estonia in the 1930s, 200,000 people died, many buried in the banks they helped to construct.
The level of calories you received was correlated to how much work you did. So you were producing less, you were fed less, which leads to a vicious circle. You get weaker and weaker and sicker and fade away and die.
I'm willing to bet that prisoners were forced to work in this quarry, in this open pit mine. And this is what you would call a spoil tip. And at some point, this quarry flooded. And that would explain why they have the buildings in the water.
Ivar Golev was incarcerated at the site in the image during the 1980s.
Kui ma tohiksin küsida teie käest, miks teid arreteeriti ja miks teid saadeti vangla?
Ja räägin ka lühidalt ära, kuidas väikese inimese elu võib muutuda riigi kõige suuremate, kõige kõrgemate juhtide tegevusest.
Ivar reveals that in 1982 he was working as a conductor when KGB agents infiltrated his orchestra.
Kas teid jälgiti ka kunagi?
Ja muidugi jälgiti.
On the 27th of December, without warning, the secret police arrested Ivar and falsely accused him of stealing from the state.
et mind viidi kohtusse ja kohtus siis mõistetigi mulle siis see karistusmäär 10 aastat koos kogu vara konfiskeerimisega, kusjuures see oli kõik oli nagu kuskil kellegi poolt kokku lepitud ja kohtus toimus selle asja vormistamine.
Forced to share a cell with murderers and rapists, the Soviets transferred Ivar to the flooded labor camp in the image, called Rumu.
Milline seisund oli Rumu vanglas?
Rummu oli väga suur territoorium, seal oli, ma ei tea, üle 2000 mehe oli seal olemas.
Ivar tells Johnson that communist supervisors forced many inmates to cut huge blocks of limestone in the prison quarry. The spoils from 50 years hard labor created the strange mountain now visible from space.
Kõigil oli seal töökohustus. See oli nagu mingil määral orjatöö.
Ivar reveals that the structure's drowning followed the election of reformist Russian President Mikhail Gorbachev in 1985.
Gorbachev viis ellu uue poliitika ja ühesõnaga tema poliitika tulemusel oli see, et nii minu kui ka kõikide teiste minusuguste vangimõistetud isikute need kriminaalasjad vaadati uuesti üle ja lõpetati sealt maalt ära.
Gorbachev dismantled the vast Soviet empire. Estonia was liberated from communism and the prison was shut down. When the last inmate left, the pumps in its slave labor camp fell silent. As the water rose, it swamped the quarry, shrouding the evidence of decades of oppression. But for Ivar, the scars of his experience at the hands of the Soviets can't be so easily concealed.
Kas te olete vihane?
Ja. Ja kindlasti ka minu perekond kannatas. Loomulikult oli neil raske seda taluda ja see aeg üle elada.